On the night I turned 29, my parents turned my home into a war zone, one where I wasn't welcome. By morning, they would learn the cost of cutting off the one person holding their world together. They thought they were teaching me a lesson about independence. Instead, they gave me the perfect opportunity to show them exactly how dependent they'd been on me all along. Every unpaid bill, every frozen account, every desperate phone call that followed, they'd orchestrated their own downfall the moment they handed me that eviction notice alongside my birthday cake. My name is Lydia Monroe, and on the night of my 29th birthday, I learned that blood isn't always thicker than water. Sometimes it's just thinner than money. The autumn air in Clearwater, Michigan, bit at my cheeks as I balanced a small chocolate cake in one hand and fumbled for my keys with the other. 9:45 p.m. The bakery had almost been closed, but Mrs. Henderson had stayed open an extra 15 minutes when she heard it was for my birthday. 29 years young, she'd said with a wink, sliding the cake across the counter. Make a good wish, sweetheart. I should have wished for a new family. The porch light was off when I reached the house, the same two-story colonial where I'd spent every birthday for the past decade since moving back after college. Through the kitchen window, I could see my parents sitting at the dinner table, their plates already cleared. They hadn't waited for me. Again. "I'm home," I called, setting the cake on the counter. The silence that greeted me was heavy, deliberate. My father, Raymond, didn't look up from his newspaper. My mother, Elaine, traced the rim of her coffee mug with one finger, her lips pressed into that thin line I'd learned to fear as a child. "There's leftover meatloaf in the fridge," Mom said finally, her voice flat as old soda. I forced a smile. "That's okay. I grabbed something at work, but I brought cake, thought we could celebrate." Dad's newspaper rustled. "Celebrate what?" The words hung in the air like icicles, sharp and ready to fall. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline to a joke that wasn't coming. "My birthday, Dad. It's my birthday. We need to talk." He folded the newspaper with military precision, each crease deliberate. When he finally looked at me, his gray eyes were cold as the Michigan winter we'd barely survived last year, the one where I'd paid for the furnace repair because they'd forgotten to set aside money for emergencies. "Sit," he commanded. I sank into my usual chair, the cake forgotten on the counter behind me. Mom shifted in her seat, still avoiding eye contact. The kitchen felt smaller suddenly, the yellow walls I'd helped repaint last summer closing in. "You're 29 years old," Dad began, as if I needed reminding. "When I was your age, I'd already been married 5 years, had my own home, my own life. Your mother and we've been patient, more than patient." "I don't understand." "You're too old to be living here. Lydia, it's time you learned to stand on your own feet." The words didn't register at first. They bounced off my brain like rain on glass, refusing to sink in. Are you asking me to pay more rent because I already cover the utilities, the internet, the... No, Mom's voice cut through my rambling. "We're asking you to leave." The kitchen clock ticked, 10:03, 10:04. Each second stretched like taffy, sticky and surreal. "You want me to move out?" I repeated slowly, testing the words. "When?" Dad's jaw tightened. "Tonight would be best. You can come back for your things tomorrow afternoon." "Tonight." The word came out as a whisper. "But it's my birthday. It's 10 at night. Where am I supposed to—" "That's not our problem anymore." He pushed back from the table, the chair legs scraping against linoleum. "You've had plenty of time to figure out your life. Lydia, we've coddled you long enough. This is for your own good." I looked between them, searching for some sign that this was a terrible joke. Mom studied her coffee mug like it held the secrets of the universe. Dad stood rigid by the sink, his back to me. "All those times I helped," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "The car payments when Mom got laid off, the roof repairs, the medical bills. Did any of that mean anything to you? We never asked you for those things. Mom said quietly. You chose to help. That was your decision. The laugh that escaped me was bitter as black coffee. Of course, when the help was needed, I was family. When the crisis passed, I was a burden. I stood slowly, my legs unsteady. Can I at least pack a bag? 15 minutes, Dad said without turning around. Then you need to go. I climbed the stairs to my room, my former room, each step an effort. Behind me, I heard Mom's voice, soft but clear. It's for the best, Raymond. She needs to learn. 15 minutes to pack 29 years. I almost laughed again. Instead, I pulled out my phone and did what I'd always done in a crisis. I started making a list. But this time, it wasn't groceries to buy or bills to pay. This time, I was listing everything I was about to take away from them as I threw clothes into a duffel bag, my hands moving on autopilot, memories flooded back like water through a broken dam. Each one was a receipt I'd never bothered to keep, a transaction I'd never thought to document until now. Last winter, when the heating bill came in at $600, Dad had stood in this very room, rubbing his temples, muttering about the economy and his reduced hours at the plant. I'd quietly logged into the utility company's website that night and paid it in full. Must have been a billing error, he'd said when the lights stayed on. They marked it as paid. I never corrected him. Then there was Mom's car. The transmission had gone out right before Christmas 2 years ago. $3,000 the mechanic had quoted. Might as well buy a new car for that price. I'd watched her cry at the kitchen table, worried about how she'd get to her part-time job at the library. The next morning, I'd handed her an envelope with cash. Early Christmas present, I'd said. She'd hugged me then, called me her guardian angel. Apparently, angels have expiration dates. The roof leak started small, just a water stain on the ceiling of their bedroom, but small problems become big ones when ignored, and by the time they mentioned it to me, half the attic insulation was ruined. $4,000. I'd paid the contractor directly, told my parents it was covered by insurance. Dad had believed it because he wanted to, because the alternative meant acknowledging he couldn't provide for his own home. I pulled my laptop from my desk, wrapping it carefully in a sweater. How many other times? The grocery runs when Mom's checking account hit zero. The medication copays Dad pretended he didn't need help with. The family cell phone plan I'd been paying for 5 years, letting them think it was some grandfathered unlimited deal. Each memory was another twist of the knife. I'd been so careful to preserve their pride, to make my help seem like coincidence or good fortune. I'd made myself invisible, a ghost who fixed problems in the night, and now they were exorcising me from the house I'd helped them keep. My phone buzzed. A text from Marissa. Still at work, want to grab a drink for your birthday. I stared at the message, thumb hovering over the keyboard. How did you explain that your parents had given you homelessness for your birthday? 5 minutes, Dad's voice boomed from downstairs. I grabbed my phone charger, my work clothes for tomorrow, my birth certificate from the filing cabinet, the essentials of a life abruptly uprooted. On my way out, I stopped at my desk drawer. Inside was a folder I'd labeled house stuff, every receipt I'd actually kept, every bank transfer screenshot, every payment confirmation email I'd thought might be important someday. Someday had arrived ahead of schedule. I lifted the folder, feeling its weight. 3 years of financial band-aids, of being the silent safety net they pretended didn't exist. I'd kept these out of habit, the accountant in me unable to throw away financial documents. Now they felt like evidence in a case I hadn't known I was building. Time's up, Lydia. I shoved the folder into my bag and took one last look around my room. The walls still held faint rectangles where my college posters had hung. The bookshelf I'd built myself sophomore year of high school sagged under the weight of accounting textbooks and paperback mysteries. 29 years reduced to shadows and furniture I'd have to retrieve tomorrow. They were waiting at the bottom of the stairs, Dad with his arms crossed, Mom wringing her hands but standing firm beside him. The united front they'd never quite managed when it came to disciplining me as a child, achieved at last for my eviction. Your key, Dad held out his hand. I pulled the keyring from my pocket, working the house key free with trembling fingers. It came loose with a small metallic clink, taking with it the tiny plastic rewards card for the grocery store where I bought their food, the gym membership tag I'd let expire to save money for their bills. I placed the key in his palm, and he closed his fist around it like he was afraid I'd change my mind. "This is what's best," Mom said, her voice wavering just slightly. "You'll thank us someday." I looked at them both. These people who'd raised me, who'd taught me to share and be kind and help family. The irony was sharp enough to cut. "I've been paying your bills for 3 years," I said quietly. "I kept you in this house, and you're putting me out on the street on my birthday." "Nobody asked you to. Dad started." "No," I interrupted, surprising us both. "You just let me. Every time. You took the money, you took the help, and you told yourselves it didn't count because you never said please." I walked past them to the kitchen, where my birthday cake still sat on the counter, untouched and unwanted. 29 candles I'd never light, wishes I'd never make. I left it there, let them choke on it. The October night was crisp and clear, stars visible despite the streetlights. I sat in my car for a moment, engine off, staring at the house I'd helped save. The porch light remained off, and no shadows moved behind the curtains. They'd already forgotten me. I pulled out my phone and typed a reply to Marissa. "Change of plans. Can I crash on your couch tonight?" Then I opened my banking app, looking at the checking account I'd faithfully kept flush for family emergencies. The savings account I'd never quite managed to build because there was always something Dad's hours cut. Mom's medication, the house needing this or that. For the first time in 3 years, every cent in those accounts was mine. The thought should have been liberating. Instead, I felt like I'd been paying rent on a family that had finally evicted me. Marissa's apartment was a 20-minute drive across town, but I took the long way, needing time to think. By the time I pulled into her complex, it was nearly 11 p.m., and my phone had accumulated 7 missed calls from Mom's number. I let them go to voicemail. "Oh, honey," Marissa said when she opened the door, taking one look at my duffel bag and tear-stained face. "Get in here." She didn't ask questions, just handed me a glass of wine and pointed to the couch. "Netflix is queued up. Ice cream's in the freezer. Take your time." But I didn't want Netflix. I wanted revenge. No, that wasn't quite right. I wanted justice. I wanted them to understand, for once, exactly what they'd thrown away. The wine sat untouched as I opened my laptop, my accountant's brain already calculating, planning, itemizing the systematic dissolution of their comfortable life. I started with the utilities. The electric bill was in my name, had been since Dad's credit tanked 3 years ago. A few clicks on the power company's website service disconnection scheduled for tomorrow at noon. Water bill. Also mine. Click. Gone. Internet and cable. The account I'd set up when the promotional rate under their names expired. Click. Disconnected. My fingers moved faster now. Muscle memory from years of managing their finances. The family cell phone plan I'd ported them onto when they couldn't afford their own. Click. Their lines would be suspended by morning. The streaming services they used daily but never saw the bills for. Click, click, click. Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime all gone. Then came the bigger fish. The joint checking account Mom had begged me to open for emergencies. She had access but never contributed, treating it like a backup fund for her overdrafts. I initiated a transfer to my personal account $8,000 I'd saved despite everything. The account would close automatically once empty. The car insurance was trickier. I'd added them to my policy for the multi-car discount, paying their premiums to keep their rates low. One phone call to the 24-hour service line. I need to remove 2 vehicles from my policy, effective immediately. "May I ask why?" the representative asked. "They're no longer my responsibility." The credit card was the finale, the one I'd co-signed for them 2 years ago when Dad needed to rebuild his credit, the one they'd maxed out twice, leaving me to pay it down, the one currently carrying a $3,000 balance from Mom's shopping therapy after her sister's death. I couldn't close it, they were joint account holders, but I could freeze it. Click. By midnight, I'd severed every financial artery that kept their household running. Tomorrow, they'd wake up to a brave new world, one where their 30-year-old daughter wasn't secretly subsidizing their lifestyle. Holy shit, Marissa said, looking over my shoulder. She'd been quietly watching for the past hour. You were paying for all that. I showed her my spreadsheet because of course I had a spreadsheet. 3 years of payments, color-coded by category. Utilities in blue, insurance in green, miscellaneous household expenses in yellow. The total at the bottom made her whistle low. $43,000, she read. Lydia, that's a down payment on a house. It was their house, I said quietly. I was just paying to live in it. Except they charged me rent on top of everything else. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. Your mother is upset. This is childish. Come home and we'll talk. I almost laughed. Now they wanted to talk. Now that I'd left, taken my keys and my dignity and walked out their door. But they hadn't realized yet that I'd taken so much more. You should save all this, Marissa suggested, gesturing at my laptop screen. Screenshots, confirmation emails, everything. Why? Because when they realize what you've done, they're going to try to guilt you. They're going to tell everyone you abandoned them. You need proof that you were the only thing keeping them afloat. She was right. I'd spent so long protecting their pride that I'd forgotten to protect myself. But that ended tonight. I created a new folder, evidence. Every cancellation confirmation, every account closure, every final bill showing my name as the primary account holder. 3 years of invisible support, now documented in damning detail. As I worked, something shifted inside me. The hurt was still there, raw and aching like a broken bone. But underneath it, something else stirred. Relief. Maybe. Or maybe it was just the intoxicating realization that for the first time in years, I was free. Free from the constant mental math of whether I could afford my student loan payment and Dad's blood pressure medication. Free from the anxiety of checking their bank balance before my own. Free from pretending I didn't notice Mom's shopping bags while my own clothes came from clearance racks. You know what the really sick part is, I said, closing my laptop as the clock approached I would have kept doing it if they'd just said thank you once in a while. If they'd acknowledged what I was doing, I would have kept paying their way forever. Marissa squeezed my shoulder. Maybe that's why they had to kick you out. They knew you'd never leave on your own. I thought about that as I settled onto her couch, still in my work clothes, too exhausted to change. Maybe she was right. Maybe they'd done me a favor, in the cruelest possible way. But as I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't help but smile at the thought of tomorrow, somewhere around noon, when the power shut off, when Dad tried to check the game scores and found the internet dead, when Mom reached for her credit card at the grocery store. They'd wanted me to learn independence. They were about to get a masterclass in it themselves. I woke to the sound of my phone vibrating against Marissa's coffee table. 6:47 a.m. The screen showed 18 missed calls, 10 from Mom, 8 from Dad. The voicemails started confused, then angry, then desperate. I deleted them without listening. Morning, sunshine, Marissa said, already dressed for her shift at the hospital. There's coffee made, and your phone's been going off for an hour. I know, I said, stretching out the kinks from sleeping on her couch. Let it ring. At work, I tried to focus on spreadsheets and client accounts, but my personal phone kept lighting up with notifications. By 10 a.m., the calls had shifted to texts. Mom, 10:03 a.m. The power company says there's been a mistake. Please call them. Dad, 10:15 a.m. Your mother can't get through to fix the electricity. Whatever game you're playing, stop it. Mom, 10:47 a.m. My card was declined at Kroger. Did you do something to the credit card? Dad, 11:23 a.m. The internet is off. Fix this now. I set my phone to silent and got back to work. At Harborview Financial Services, I was known for my attention to detail, my reliability. My coworkers had no idea that the composed woman reconciling million-dollar accounts was watching her family's life fall apart in real time through increasingly frantic text messages. Lunch came with an unexpected visitor. Marissa texted me from the lobby. "Your mom is at my apartment, super pissed, demanding to know where you are." My stomach twisted. Of course they'd figured out where I'd gone. Clearwater was a small town. There were only so many places I could be. But Marissa was tougher than me in many ways. She'd handle it. "Don't tell her where I work," I replied. "Girl, I'm not telling her shit, but you might want to know she looks rough. Like, yesterday's makeup and mismatched shoes rough." Good. Let her feel disheveled for once. Let her experience a fraction of the chaos I'd been managing for years. By 2 p.m., the texts had evolved into threats. "Dad, this is theft. We'll call the police if you don't fix this immediately." I almost laughed. Theft. They wanted to talk about theft. I pulled up my evidence folder, scrolling through 3 years of payments. If anyone had been robbed, it was me. My boss, Janet, must have noticed my distraction. "Everything okay? Lydia, you seem off today." "Family stuff," I said, which was both true and vastly understated. "Take the afternoon if you need to," she offered. "You never miss work. We can cover." But work was the only normal thing left in my life. I thanked her and stayed, burying myself in numbers that made sense, that balanced, that followed rules and logic unlike the chaos of family. At 4:30 p.m., a new number appeared on my phone. The voicemail was from my Aunt Patricia, Mom's sister. "Lydia, honey, I don't know what's going on, but your parents are at my house, and they're a mess. Your mom is crying about being homeless. Call me." Homeless. The irony was almost poetic. One night without power, without their credit cards and streaming services, and they felt homeless. Meanwhile, they'd kicked their actual daughter out with 15 minutes' notice and no concern for where she'd sleep. The final straw came at 5:15 p.m., just as I was packing up to leave. An email popped up on my personal account from Raymond Monroe. The subject line, "Final warning." "Lydia, your mother and I have consulted with Jim Davidson. You remember him. He handled the Petersons' divorce. He says what you've done constitutes financial abuse and abandonment of dependent parents. You have until 8 p.m. tonight to restore all services and return the money you stole, or we will pursue legal action. We didn't raise you to be vindictive and cruel. This behavior is beneath the daughter we thought we knew." "Dad." I stared at the email, reading it twice to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Dependent parents, financial abuse. They'd kicked me out 12 hours ago, and now they were claiming dependence. But the mention of Jim Davidson made me pause. He was a real lawyer, albeit one who mostly handled small-town property disputes and DUIs. They were serious enough to seek legal counsel, which meant I needed to be serious about protecting myself. I forwarded the email to my personal cloud storage, then took screenshots of everything: the threat, the timestamp, the admission that they'd consulted a lawyer, evidence on top of evidence. Let them try to spin this in court. Let them explain to a judge how their 29-year-old daughter, whom they'd evicted without cause, had somehow abandoned them by canceling services that were in her name. "You okay?" Marissa asked when I got back to her apartment. "You look ready to murder someone." "They're threatening to sue me," I said, showing her the email. "For financial abuse. Can you believe that?" She read it, her expression darkening with each line. "Oh, hell no! They kick you out and then claim you abandoned them. That's some next-level manipulation." "I need to find my own place," I said suddenly. "I can't keep crashing on your couch, and I need a permanent address if this gets legal." "Stay as long as you need," she assured me. "But yeah, might be good to get your own space. Show them you're moving on." Moving on. It sounded so simple when she said it. But as I scrolled through apartment listings on my phone, each one represented something I'd never thought I'd need: a life completely separate from the people who'd raised me. My phone buzzed with one final text of the day. this time from a number I didn't recognize. Hi, Lydia. This is Mrs. and Patterson from next door. Just wanted you to know your parents have been going door to door asking if anyone's seen you. Your dad is telling people you stole from them. Thought you should know. Hope you're safe. Dear. I saved that text too. More evidence of their smear campaign, their attempt to control the narrative. But Mrs. Patterson's concern was touching. Maybe not everyone would believe their version of events. As night fell, I realized I'd survived my first full day as an orphan, not because my parents were dead, but because they'd killed whatever relationship we'd had. 8 p.m. came and went, their deadline passing without ceremony. I didn't restore their services. I didn't return their money. Instead, I opened a new browser tab and started looking for attorneys of my own. If they wanted a fight, I'd give them one. But this time, I wouldn't be paying for both sides. By Thursday morning, my parents' smear campaign had reached full velocity. I discovered this while buying coffee at Brewster's, the only decent cafe in downtown Clearwater. The barista, Ashley, whom I'd known since high school, could barely meet my eyes as she handed me my latte. "Rough week," she asked carefully, and I knew immediately that she'd heard something. I checked Facebook in my car, my stomach sinking with each scroll. There it was, posted in the Clearwater community group at 6:43 a. From Raymond Monroe, friends and neighbors. It breaks my heart to share this, but we need your prayers and support. Our daughter has abandoned us in our time of need, stealing thousands from our accounts and leaving us without power or basic necessities. Elaine and I are devastated. We raised her better than this. If anyone sees Lydia, please ask her to come home. We forgive her and just want our daughter back. 147 reactions, 82 comments, most expressing shock, offering prayers, condemning the heartless daughter who could do such a thing to her parents. A few asking for more details, quickly shut down by Mom's replies about it being too painful to discuss. My hands shook as I scrolled through the comments. These were people I'd grown up with, who'd known me since I was in pigtails. Now they were calling me ungrateful, selfish, disturbed. Someone suggested I might be on drugs. Another wondered if I'd fallen in with a bad crowd. "That's not even the worst one," Marissa said when I called her from the parking lot. "Check the Clearwater Neighbors Watch page." I did. This time it was Mom's post, complete with a photo of me from last Christmas smiling, unaware that the family I was celebrating with would one day paint me as a villain. Missing our daughter Lydia Monroe, age 29. Last seen October 15th. She left home after a mental health episode and has cut off all contact. She may be confused and has access to family financial accounts. If you see her, please contact us immediately. We just want to know she's safe. Mental health episode. They were actually pretending I'd had some kind of breakdown. The comments here were worse, full of armchair diagnoses and false sympathy. Someone mentioned seeing me at work yesterday, looking disturbed. Another claimed I'd always been off. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, engine running, trying to process the scope of their lies. They weren't just trying to save face, they were actively destroying my reputation, turning the entire town against me before I could tell my side. "You have to fight back," Marissa urged when I got to work, still shaken. "Post your own truth." But I wasn't ready. Not yet. First, I needed to document everything. Every lie, every twisted detail, every comment from well-meaning neighbors who had no idea they were enabling abusers. I spent my lunch break taking screenshots, saving posts, archiving comments. My evidence folder grew thicker. Then I did something I should have done years ago. I went through my old photos, my text messages, my emails. I found the paper trail I'd never thought to look for before. A text from Mom, dated last January. "Can you cover the electricity again? Dad's check was short." An email from Dad, from 6 months ago. "Need you to handle the car insurance this month. Things are tight." Photos from Christmas morning, showing the empty tree because they couldn't afford presents, followed by my bank statement showing the $1,000 I'd spent to make sure they had gifts to open. Years of evidence that I wasn't their abandoner, I was their enabler, and they'd kicked me out anyway. By 3 p.m., the narrative had evolved. Now I was apparently threatening them. Dad posted a vague status about harassment and feeling unsafe in our own home. Mom shared an article about elder abuse with the caption, "Never thought this would be our story." Elder abuse. They were in their late 50s, both healthy, both capable of working full-time if they chose. But in their story, they were helpless victims of their cruel daughter's financial manipulation. I was composing a response in my head, crafting the perfect rebuttal to their lies, when my phone rang, an unfamiliar local number. "Miss Monroe, this is Officer Chen from the Clearwater Police Department. We've received a welfare check request from your parents. They're concerned about your mental state. Could you come down to the station to clear this up?" My blood ran cold. They'd actually called the police. They were trying to have me involuntarily committed or at least officially documented as unstable. "I'm at work," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I'm perfectly fine. This is a family dispute, not a mental health crisis." "I understand, ma'am, but we need to follow up on these reports. Can you come by after work, just to close out the report?" I agreed, knowing I had no choice. Refusing would only make me look guilty of something. The rest of the afternoon crawled by. Janet noticed my distraction again, but said nothing. My co-workers whispered among themselves, and I wondered how many of them had seen the Facebook posts. In a town this small, everyone was connected to everyone. At 5 p.m., I gathered my courage and made my own post. Not in the community groups I'd been blocked from those, I discovered, but on my own profile, public for anyone to see. To everyone who's been asking about me, I'm safe, I'm sane, and I'm employed. I was asked to leave my childhood home on my 29th birthday and have been staying with a friend. Any financial accounts that were closed were in my name, paid for by me, for services I will no longer be providing. I have 3 years of documentation to prove this. I wish my parents well, but I will not be returning to a home where I'm not wanted. Thank you to those who've reached out with genuine concern. Simple, factual, no accusations, no drama. Let them escalate while I stayed calm. Within minutes, my post had reactions, some supportive, some skeptical. A few people messaged privately, admitting they'd found my parents' story suspicious. Mrs. Patterson commented, "Always knew you were a good girl. Lydia, truth has a way of coming out." But the damage was spreading faster than the truth. By the time I left for the police station, I'd been unfriended by dozens of people, removed from group chats, uninvited from an upcoming high school reunion. In less than 48 hours, my parents had turned me into Clearwater's most wanted, not by the law, but by the court of public opinion. As I parked at the station, I realized this was exactly what they wanted. If they couldn't control me with guilt, they'd control the narrative. If they couldn't keep me as their personal ATM, they'd destroy my reputation so thoroughly that I'd have no choice but to come crawling back, begging for forgiveness. They'd underestimated me, just like they'd underestimated how much I'd been holding together. Now they were about to learn what happened when you bit the hand that fed you, especially when that hand had been keeping receipts. The police station visit was brief but illuminating. Officer Martinez, a young woman who'd graduated a few years after me, took my statement with professional neutrality. After confirming I was employed, housed, and showing no signs of distress, she closed the welfare check with a note that I appeared completely lucid and stable. "Between you and me," she said quietly as I prepared to leave, "we see this kind of thing a lot. Family disputes that escalate to false reports. Just keep documenting everything." I left feeling vindicated but exhausted. The smear campaign had failed to have me committed, but the damage to my reputation was spreading like wildfire through Clearwater's digital grapevine. Friday morning brought a shift in the tide. I woke to find my Facebook post had gone semi-viral within our local network. More importantly, people were starting to ask questions. The inconsistencies in my parents' story were showing cracks. Someone pointed out that if I'd truly had a mental break and stolen thousands, why hadn't they filed a police report for theft? Another person noted that Mom's missing person post listed me as last seen on October 15th, but Dad had posted about consulting a lawyer on October 16th. Hard to consult lawyers about someone who's missing. But the real turning point came from an unexpected source, Brenda Chen Davidson from the Clearwater Library, where Mom worked part-time. "This doesn't add up," she commented on Dad's original post. "Elaine was at work yesterday complaining about her electricity being shut off for non-payment. If Lydia stole money, why didn't Elaine just pay the bill herself?" The comment was deleted within minutes, but screenshots were already circulating. The narrative was unraveling, and my parents' attempts to control it were becoming increasingly desperate. By noon, I'd made a decision. Playing defense wasn't enough. It was time to show Clearwater exactly who had been supporting whom. I created a new post, this time with attachments. So, since there seems to be confusion about my family's financial situation, I thought I'd provide some clarity. Attached are receipts totaling $43,000 over the past 3 years. These include utility payments all in my name, mortgage assistance $500 month for 18 months, car insurance for 2 vehicles, medical co-pays and prescriptions, grocery bills, emergency repairs. Every dollar was given freely to help my family. I never asked for recognition or repayment. I just asked for respect. On October 15th, my 29th birthday, I was told to leave the house I'd helped save from foreclosure. The services I canceled were all in my name, paid by me. I don't share this for sympathy but for truth. I wish my parents no ill will, but I won't stand by while they paint me as a thief and claim I abandoned them. They asked me to leave. I simply took my financial support with me. I attached 15 images, a carefully curated selection from my evidence folder, bank statements with recurring payments highlighted, the mortgage assistance checks, the utility bills showing my name as the account holder. Not everything I kept plenty in reserve, but enough to shift the narrative. Then I tagged everyone who'd commented on my parents' posts. The response was immediate and explosive. Shares and comments poured in. People who'd rushed to judgment began backpedaling. Others expressed outrage at being misled. The tide of public opinion, so quick to condemn, began to turn. "Holy shit," someone wrote. "She was paying their mortgage. $500 a month for 18 months. That's $9,000 just in mortgage help." Wait, so they kicked out the person paying their bills and then called her the abuser. My phone buzzed with messages from people apologizing, expressing support, sharing their own stories of toxic family dynamics. 3 separate people offered me places to stay. The high school reunion invitation was mysteriously re-extended. But the real victory came when Patricia Nguyen, who ran Clearwater's most popular gossip blog, picked up the story. Her post, titled "Local Parents Kick Out Daughter, Cry Victim When Bills Come Due," included screenshots of everything the original accusations. My receipts, the timeline inconsistencies, even Brenda's deleted comment about Mom's complaint at work. By evening, my parents' posts had been edited multiple times, then deleted entirely. But the internet never forgets, and Patricia had preserved everything. Mom tried damage control with a new post. There are 2 sides to every story. We never asked Lydia for money. She chose to help and is now holding it over our heads. We just wanted our daughter to be independent. The comments were brutal. Independent. She was paying your bills. You kicked her out on her birthday. Ma'am, your daughter was independent. You were the dependents. Dad attempted a different approach, posting about how family matters should stay private and how airing dirty laundry was beneath them. The irony of this statement, after their very public smear campaign, was lost on no one. By Saturday morning, the narrative had completely flipped. My parents had gone from victims to villains in the court of public opinion. Their attempt to destroy my reputation had backfired spectacularly, leaving their own credibility in ruins. I found myself in the strange position of fielding interview requests from local news outlets. Family finance drama divides Clearwater community. I declined them all. Unlike my parents, I had no interest in turning our family dysfunction into a media circus. But I did accept one opportunity, a coffee meeting with Jim Davidson, the lawyer my parents had consulted. He reached out privately, professionally, to inform me that he'd declined to take their case. "No grounds whatsoever," he said over cappuccino at Brewster's. "They wanted to sue you for financial abandonment, but legally, adult children have no obligation to support able-bodied parents. Plus, your documentation is comprehensive. They didn't mention you'd been paying their bills." "Of course they didn't," I said. "For what it's worth," he added, "I think you showed remarkable restraint. Most people would have exposed this years ago." As I left the cafe, I felt something I hadn't expected: sadness. Not regret. I stood by every decision I'd made since that birthday night. But sadness for the family we could have been, if pride and entitlement hadn't poisoned the well. The truth was out now, spread across Clearwater like spilled paint, impossible to contain or cover. My parents had wanted to paint me as the villain in their story. Instead, they'd handed me the brush and watched me reveal the real picture, receipt by receipt. Monday morning arrived with an official-looking envelope slipped under Marissa's apartment door. The return address made my stomach drop. Clearwater District Court. My parents had actually done it. They'd filed papers. "You've got to be kidding me," Marissa said, reading over my shoulder as I opened it at her kitchen table. But it wasn't what we expected. Instead of a lawsuit, it was a summons for a temporary protection order hearing. My parents were claiming I was harassing them, that my Facebook posts constituted cyberstalking and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The hearing was set for Wednesday at 2 p.m. "This is insane," I said, staring at the papers. "I posted receipts. How is that harassment?" "It's not," Marissa said firmly. "They're grasping at straws. But you need a lawyer, like yesterday." I'd already researched attorneys after Jim Davidson's coffee meeting. Sarah Williams came highly recommended, a former prosecutor who'd switched to family law and had a reputation for not tolerating bullies. I called her office at 8 a.m. sharp and had an appointment by lunch. Sarah's office was nothing like the wood-paneled chambers you see on TV. It was modern, bright, with children's drawings framed on the walls from custody cases she'd won. She read through my documentation with the focus of someone who'd seen every type of family dysfunction imaginable. "Your parents are trying to weaponize the legal system," she said finally, setting down the papers. "It's a common tactic when someone loses control of the narrative. They can't win in the court of public opinion, so they're hoping to silence you through legal intimidation." "Can they actually get a protection order for posting receipts?" Highly unlikely. But here's what we're going to do." She pulled out a legal pad. "We're filing a counterclaim, not for a protection order, but for defamation. Those posts calling you mentally ill, claiming you stole from them, that's defamation per se. It damaged your reputation and could affect your employment." "I don't want their money," I said quickly. "It's not about money. It's about establishing the truth in a legal record. Right now, they're trying to create an official document that paints you as the aggressor. We need to counter that narrative with facts." We spent 2 hours preparing. Sarah was thorough, methodical, turning my emotional evidence folder into a coherent legal argument. By the time I left, I had a strategy and, more importantly, representation. Tuesday was a blur of preparation and damage control. Word had spread through my workplace about the drama Clearwater was too small for secrets, but Janet surprised me by pulling me aside. "I want you to know," she said, "that Harborview fully supports you. We've seen your character every day for 5 years. Your work speaks for itself." The support meant more than I could express. While my family crumbled, my professional life remained solid, a testament to the person I actually was versus the character my parents had tried to create. That evening, I got an unexpected call. Aunt Patricia, Mom's sister, wanted to meet. Against Marissa's advice, I agreed. We met at a neutral location, a diner on the edge of town. "I'm not here to take sides," Patricia began, though her nervous fidgeting suggested otherwise. "But Lydia, this has gone too far. Your mother is a wreck. Your father's blood pressure is through the roof." Can't you just let it go? Come home and work things out. They kicked me out, Patricia, on my birthday. I know, and that was wrong. But posting those receipts, humiliating them publicly. They called me mentally ill. They filed a false welfare check. They told the entire town I stole from them. I kept my voice level, but my hands shook around my coffee cup. Where were you when they were humiliating me? Patricia sighed. Your mother. She's always been proud, too proud, but she's still your mother. No, I said firmly. She was my mother. Past tense. Mothers don't do what she did. So that's it? You're going to destroy them over pride? I pulled out my phone, showing her my bank statement. See this $400. That's all I have left after 3 years of supporting them. I gave them $43,000. Patricia, I kept them housed, fed, connected to the world, and they thanked me by kicking me out and calling me crazy. So, yes, that's it. Patricia left in tears, but I felt oddly calm. Each conversation like this only reinforced that I'd made the right choice. Wednesday arrived gray and drizzling, fitting weather for a court appearance. I dressed carefully professional but not severe, wanting to look like the stable. Employed adult I was rather than the unhinged daughter my parents were portraying. Sarah met me outside the courthouse. Remember, she said, let me do most of the talking. Answer questions simply and honestly. Don't let them bait you into an emotional response. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, more like a large office than the grand halls of justice from movies. My parents were already there, sitting with a lawyer I didn't recognize, not Jim Davidson, but someone younger, hungrier looking. Mom had aged years in a week. Her usually perfect hair was limp, her makeup hastily applied. Dad sat rigid beside her, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle twitching. They didn't look at me. All rise for Judge Margaret Chen, the bailiff announced. Judge Chen was in her 60s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She reviewed the papers silently, occasionally glancing up at both parties. I've read both petitions, she began. Mr. and Mrs. Monroe, you're seeking a protection order against your daughter based on social media posts. Ms. Monroe, you've counterfiled for defamation. Let's start with the original petition. My parents' lawyer, introduced as Bradley Thornton, stood. His argument was passionate but thin. He painted me as a vindictive daughter who'd weaponized social media to destroy her parents' reputation. He claimed the receipts I'd posted were taken out of context and that I'd manipulated the narrative to gain sympathy. My clients are afraid to leave their home, he concluded. They're being harassed by strangers because of their daughter's malicious posts. Sarah's response was surgical. She presented the timeline: the birthday eviction, the false welfare check, the original defamatory posts. Then she showed my receipts, not just the ones I'd posted publicly, but the full documentation. Your Honor, Sarah said, my client didn't manipulate anything. She posted facts verifiable, documented facts in response to false accusations of theft and mental illness. If Mr. and Mrs. Monroe are facing social consequences, it's because their own lies have been exposed, not because Ms. Monroe has harassed them. Judge Chen asked pointed questions. Had I ever threatened my parents? No. Had I contacted them directly after leaving their home? No. Had I posted anything false or misleading? No. Then she turned to my parents. Mr. Monroe, did your daughter pay these bills? Dad shifted uncomfortably. She helped out sometimes. That's not what I asked. Did she pay these specific bills, utilities, mortgage assistance, insurance? Yes, he admitted quietly. And Mrs. Monroe, did you post that your daughter was having a mental health crisis? I was concerned. Did you or did you not claim she was mentally unstable? Yes, Mom whispered. Judge Chen's expression was unreadable as she made notes. The rain outside intensified, drumming against the courtroom windows like fingers tapping impatiently. I'm ready to rule, the judge announced. Judge Chen's voice cut through the rain-dampened silence of the courtroom. I find no evidence of harassment or stalking by Ms. Monroe. she began, her tone leaving no room for interpretation. The First Amendment protects truthful speech, even when that truth is uncomfortable for others to hear. Ms. Monroe's posts were factual responses to public accusations made against her. My parents' lawyer started to object, but Judge Chen raised a hand. Furthermore, Mr. Thornton, I find it troubling that your clients initiated a public smear campaign against their daughter, then sought legal protection when she defended herself with documented evidence. This court will not be used as a tool to silence legitimate speech. The petition for a protection order is denied. She turned to Sarah. As for the counterclaim of defamation, while I believe Ms. Monroe has grounds, I'm not ruling on that today. That would require a separate hearing. However, she looked directly at my parents. I strongly advise Mr. and Mrs. Monroe to cease any further public statements about their daughter that could be construed as defamatory. This court takes false accusations of mental illness and theft very seriously. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down with finality. My parents and their lawyer huddled briefly, then left without looking at me. Mom's shoulders shook as Dad guided her out, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. That went well, Sarah said quietly, gathering her papers. They won't bother you again, legally, at least. Outside the courthouse, the rain had stopped. Weak October sunshine broke through the clouds, turning the wet pavement into mirrors. I stood on the courthouse steps, breathing in the clean, rain-washed air. My phone buzzed with messages word had already spread about the hearing. Support poured in from unexpected corners of Clearwater. Even people who'd initially believed my parents were now expressing outrage at their legal overreach. But I felt no victory, no satisfaction, just empty, hollow, like someone had scooped out my insides and left only the shell. You okay? Sarah asked, pausing beside me. I used to dream about them apologizing, I admitted, about them realizing what they'd done and begging for forgiveness. But they're never going to see it. Are they in their minds? They'll always be the victims. Probably, Sarah agreed. Some people can't admit fault because it would mean rebuilding their entire sense of self. It's easier to double down than to change. That evening, I signed a lease for a small apartment on the other side of town. Nothing fancy, a one-bedroom above a bakery, but it was mine. As I handed over the deposit funded by the money I'd pulled from the joint account, I realized this was the first space I'd ever have that wasn't touched by their expectations or needs. Marissa helped me move in that weekend. We didn't have much to move, just my clothes, my laptop, and a few pieces of furniture from a thrift store. But as we assembled my new bed, hung curtains, arranged my few belongings, the apartment transformed from empty space into home. You know what the weird part is, I said, collapsing onto my new couch. I can afford this. For the first time in 3 years, I can actually afford my own life. Because you're not paying for theirs, Marissa pointed out. Yeah. I looked around my small kingdom, my books on the shelf, my coffee maker on the counter, my name on the lease. I guess they did teach me independence after all, just not the way they intended. 2 weeks later, I heard through the Clearwater grapevine that my parents had put their house on the market. Without my financial support, they couldn't maintain the mortgage. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The house I'd helped them save was being sold because they'd driven away their savior. I didn't gloat. I didn't comment. I just lived my life. November came with its early snow and Thanksgiving preparations. Janet invited me to her family's dinner, knowing I'd be alone. I accepted gratefully, bringing a pie I'd baked in my own oven, in my own apartment. Sometimes, late at night, I'd think about Mom and Dad, wonder where they'd go after the house sold, wonder if they'd ever understand what they'd lost when they'd chosen pride over love. But those thoughts came less frequently as time passed. On Christmas Eve, I got one final text from an unknown number. This is Mom. Just wanted you to know we're moving to Florida. Aunt Patricia is letting us stay in her condo. I hope you're happy now. I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it. Happy no, but free. Absolutely. I spent Christmas volunteering at the community center, serving dinner to people who actually needed help. As I ladled mashed potatoes onto plates, I realized something: I was still giving, still helping, still being the person my parents had raised me to be. I just wasn't giving to people who took my help for granted anymore. The last I heard, my parents were living in Patricia's guest room in Tampa, still posting occasionally about their estranged daughter and the injustice they'd suffered. But Clearwater had moved on to new dramas, new scandals. The Monroe family feud was old news. As for me, I got promoted at Harborview. I started dating someone who paid for their own dinners. I built a life that was smaller than the one I'd been maintaining. But it was mine. Every bill had only my name on it. Every achievement was my own. Every struggle, too. But at least I knew where I stood. On my 30th birthday, Marissa threw me a party in my little apartment. Friends from work came, neighbors I'd gotten to know, even Mrs. Henderson from the bakery. As I blew out my candles, I didn't wish for my family back. I didn't wish for revenge or reconciliation. I wished for continued freedom, for the strength to maintain boundaries, for the wisdom to know that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let go. The wish came true, not through birthday magic, but through the simple act of choosing myself every day. My parents had kicked me out to teach me independence. In the end, they'd taught me something far more valuable: that independence isn't just about standing on your own feet. It's about knowing when to stop carrying people who refuse to walk. The October night they'd turned me out had felt like the end of the world, but standing in my own apartment, surrounded by people who valued me for more than my bank account, I realized it had been a beginning. The night my parents kicked me out was the night I finally came home. Not to a place, but to myself. And that was worth more than all the money I'd ever given them. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever had to choose between family and your own well-being? Let me know in the comments.